トビデオ
On April 29, 1899, a boy named Edward Kennedy Ellington was born at 2129 Ida Place Northwest in the middle-class West End neighborhood of Washington, D.C. His father, James Edward, made ends meet by drawing up blueprints for the United States Navy, but in his off time, he enjoyed playing the piano, preferably classic arias from famous operas. His mother, Daisy, was also a pianist, but she preferred playing popular parlor tunes. From this home environment, Edward Kennedy Ellington was instilled with a tremendous love for all things music. Coming from an African American family, he was also instilled with the ideal of being proud of his race, his father having escaped the Jim Crow South a decade ago. Edward's mother, meanwhile, stressed to her son the importance of good manners. This was reinforced by having him attend parties with dignified ladies and regular piano lessons. His childhood friends noticed that he always carried himself with a dapper air about him, like a refined nobleman. This would earn Edward a nickname that he would go by for the rest of his life: Duke. By age 14, having been immersed in the world of music from a young age, Ellington wrote his first piece of music while working as a soda jerk, titled appropriately The Soda Fountain Rag, all in spite of the fact that he could not read nor write music just yet. By age 17, Ellington decided that he was going to devote his entire life to music. He turned down a prestigious art scholarship to the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn and began to start playing gigs in clubs and cafes across Washington, D.C. It would be the first step to Duke Ellington becoming one of the great composers in American music. Duke Ellington's influence in the world of jazz simply cannot be understated. Having a career that spanned over 6 decades, Ellington can be credited as one of the forces that brought jazz music to the masses while still staying true to its roots in African American culture. Even though he tried to downplay his accomplishments, he reportedly disliked the term jazz and preferred to just call his music music. The amount of compositions he wrote and talent he fostered, on top of being a damn fine piano player, made his legacy impossible to ignore. Fellow jazz great Miles Davis said of him that, at least one day out of the year, all musicians should just put their instruments down and give thanks to Duke Ellington. This quote carries a lot of weight when you consider even half the songs he wrote and performed: Black and Tan Blues, Cottontail, Mood Indigo, and In a Sentimental Mood, just to name a few. But if Duke Ellington had a tune that could be considered his signature tune, it would have to be the song Take the A Train. Though it was not composed by him, but rather his frequent collaborator Bill Strayhorn, Take the A Train is still a classic staple of 40s jazz music. From Duke's light opening piano chords, the composition paints a picture of stepping on a train in New York City and traveling across the borough of Manhattan, looking out the window and taking in all the lights and nightlife of the Big Apple. The composition immortalized what made Ellington and his style of performance so influential. Even when Duke Ellington died in 1974, both he and the composition continue to inspire people creatively to this day. Naturally, that inspiration went beyond America's borders and across the Pacific to a small island nation known for its animation industry. And what came of it was not a song, but an anime. A very, very strange anime. Isihara Toru is your average everyday loser. His job as a junior salaryman for the marketing department of a railway company works him like a dog. The relationship between him and his girlfriend is going nowhere aside from empty casual sex, and he looks like the love child of Egon Spengler and Kramer. One day, Toru finds his rail otaku boss distraught in the meeting room over a storied electrical train once the historical pride and joy of the rail line is due to be scrapped soon.
大変いいアイデアだとは思うのですが、問題が一つ。何でしょう。EF5861 は確か2、3日中に解体される予定に。
Later that evening, while waiting at the train station, he has a chance encounter with a ghost of the same train that is due to be decommissioned. It's an apparition made completely of electricity that sparks up the train tracks and sets off massive EMPs in its wake. But most importantly, Toru starts getting intense nosebleeds whenever he feels its presence nearby. The media dubs this new phenomenon the X-Train, and Toro is full ready to blab about his encounter with it, but he is soon kidnapped by a clandestine government agency who believe that he has some psychic connection with the train. Does Toru have ESP? Should he trust the mysterious government agency that kidnapped him? And what kind of encounters will he continue to have with this mysterious X-Train? 1987's Take the X-Train is a beautiful relic of the golden age of anime OVAs. Because studios were just flush with cash in the 80s, it meant that so much anime was produced with the only justification being that the director thought it was a good idea. I said it before, but it was truly the era to be an auteur in the anime industry. And who better to create an anime this experimental, this psychedelic, this bizarrely genre-defying than Madhouse's own Rintaro. Rintaro is truly one of the most fascinating of the old masters of anime, an unassuming unsung figure from the more casual otaku crowd, but a visionary in the truest sense of the word by those in the know. He is a man who, over the course of his career as a director, is always willing to take the big creative risk, even if those risks don't always pan out. You don't have to like him, but you gotta respect him. And boy is this one of those works that is physical evidence of Rintaro's brand. This is one of those animes that is just the hardest of hard sells. It's part comedy, part conspiracy thriller, part supernatural horror, part tribute to famed jazz composer Duke Ellington, to the point where that's the very first words you see right when the anime starts. Frankly, there is nothing like this anime, and there never will be again. So I don't think it's that surprising that this anime has a below 6 rating on my anime list. An anime this enigmatic is gonna be an acquired taste for most out there. But at the same time, weebs are also cowards. And I can say that because this anime rules actually. I love this anime. I love looking at this anime. I love the fact that this anime exists. And that's why for this video, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna sell you on Take the X-Train. But I should warn you, it's gonna be weird. Fun, but weird. In lieu of talking about the production history like I usually do, I'm instead going to talk about and theorize as to why Take the X-Train is just so damn obscure. What little I could find about the production was untranslated, but the information I was able to dredge up did lead me down an interesting path. When you factor who worked on this anime, it doesn't make any sense why this OVA would fall by the wayside. This is a Madhouse joint done by one of the studio's founders at the helm. Even if it was this low-selling curiosity, that pedigree should have at least warranted a token DVD release. I found the highest quality version of this anime with soft subs and everything, and it is still obviously footage ripped from a VHS. What could possibly be the reason why the spooky jazz odyssey about ghost trains has become such a rarity? The answer is actually quite obvious when you follow the money and find out what company brought this OVA into being in the first place. Yepperoonie. The main source of funding for Rintaro's tribute to Duke Ellington was video games behemoth Konami. Take the X-Train was part of Konami's extremely brief venture into the world of OVAs in the 80s, with them just producing 2 titles, this one and the other being a forgotten adaptation of their arcade game Salamander. I don't know for certain what made Konami want to put money towards funding this. But whatever it was, I think Konami would really prefer to forget about it. This anime, along with the aforementioned Salamander, have never gotten a release outside the year they came out. And if Konami didn't do it then, there is a snowflake's chance in Hades that they will do it now. After all, this is a company trying desperately to bury the history they had prior to 2015. If it can't be turned into a Apache slot franchise, why should they even bother? There's also the fact that Konami didn't fully secure the rights to use Duke Ellington's Take the A-Train in the anime, and while it's mostly just an approximation of the tune with some tweaks, it's still noticeable enough that it could result in a good old-fashioned music rights entanglement. So in short, if you're expecting Discotheque or Retro Crush to bring this anime to the States in any official capacity, good luck, buddy. As for the anime itself, it's a very visual anime. It has an aesthetic that is unlike anything I've seen in an 80s anime. It's got some of that pop art flair that you would see in an anime like California Crisis or 1919, but this is a very different flavor of flair. It's a very abrasive brand of pop art aesthetic, lacking any sort of the clean slickness that the other anime have in favor of this grungy street level atmosphere. If this anime had a smell, it would be of cigarette ash and cheap cup noodles. Kind of feels like a Ralph Bakshi film if that makes any sense.
I'm not getting in that filthy, grimy garbage can with you.
Okay, go fuck yourself.
The visual coarseness of Take the X Train does make it stand out visually, but according to some reviewers I've read, that's a problem. People have taken this anime to task for being just too ugly for their taste, especially the character designs courtesy of Yoshinori Kanamori. Kanamori is an animator who has his own unique brand of character designs. He likes to make every character distinct by heavily utilizing basic shapes in their design. Take the X Train is Kanamori's philosophy of designing humans taken to its most extreme. Characters are simultaneously extremely cartoonish in their designs and proportions, but also have this hyper-realistic detail to them. It feels like a deliberate choice where the flaws in each character's features are shown as a way to make them more human. I guess I can get why all this might be off-putting to some people, but to me, the visuals are what makes this anime so great. It's abrasive, yes, but it's captivatingly abrasive. Scenes set in an office or the city streets are dominated by loud, colorful advertisements, but scenes set in complete darkness, by contrast, feel dank and unwelcoming. And what light we do see is harsh and oppressive, which adds to the tension of some scenes. Scenes also have some very unique overall direction, with Rentaro doing things like having the opening scene in a meeting room be blocked like a play,
それははっきり言ってポストをもらう。
そうですよ。だからさっきから言ってるでしょ。あれから1時間以上。
そこで登場するのがこの EF5861 です。
or having Toru express this train of thought by having short thought bubbles and having most of them be completely irrelevant to the plot, and just being like any other random train of thoughts.
トール君の思い出、美しく撮っておきたい。トール君。
And then there's the animation. Overall, the character animation is good and very active, with characters moving in a way that doesn't sacrifice their detail, but what I really want to talk about is the effects animation. Oh god, the effects animation. Hand-drawn lightning animation are a finite resource, especially well-animated ones. So to have the animators of Madhouse draw the eponymous train as this entity of pure electricity and have the electricity behave like actual electricity is a huge accomplishment. The way it arcs and scatters and flashes like real electricity makes this one of the best examples of lightning effects in animation. And, I remind you again, this is all drawn by hand. If you did it today, it would just be another After Effects layer and would not look nearly as good. But here, it just has that, well, spark. Take the X Train is an anime that can totally get by on its visuals alone. It's just another astonishing example of great experimental animation direction and visuals that was allowed to thrive in this environment. Just an anime that revels in its oddball nature. And it really has to be with the kind of story it is telling. As much as I have been selling this anime on Rentaro being the auteur genius behind this anime, this is actually not his story. Take the X Train is actually an adaptation of a short story written by noted Japanese science fiction author Koichi Yamano. Yamano is less known as an author and more for his general opinions in the realm of science fiction in Japan. In the 60s, he felt like Japanese sci-fi writers at the time were just aping popular tropes that were prevalent in American works. He instead felt like there was more potential and possibilities coming from the new wave out of Britain and their associated counterculture. Yamano advocated for this type of writing, which eschewed hard science in favor of absurdism, heavy symbolism, and exploration of phenomena that simply cannot be explained. In layman's terms, he wanted less Heinlein and more Ballard. I'm unable to judge Take the X Train's status as an adaptation because I do not have the original text on hand. What I can see, however, is that this does carry a lot of Yamano's ideals of what should go into making a science fiction story. Namely, the entire nature of the narrative is completely absurdist. Not just in the weirdly humorous way like Toru's boss being a rail fan who goes to work wearing jeans and a t-shirt, but in the traditional Camus way of everyone and everything behaving in a way that's irrational and meaningless like the universe surrounding them. For instance, Toru's girlfriend wants to randomly break up with him, not because she doesn't like him anymore, but because she wants to better cherish her memories of him. And Toru is totally down with that.
誤解しないで。トール君のこと嫌いになったわけじゃないの。ただ、トール君の思い出美しく撮っておきたい。ショックだった？
そんなことないよ。
And then there's the entire thing with the ghost train that is the centerpiece of the entire plot. It is an unexplained phenomenon that remains unexplained. Nobody knows what this thing is, why it has appeared all of a sudden, or why Toru appears to have a psychic link to it, much less Toru. Our protagonist has zero idea what is going on. He has no idea what this train is, or why he can control it, or even how he can control it. This really frustrates the government agents going after him because when they try to pump him for information, the only answer they get out of him is a casual,
心臓移植手術の夢を見たことがありますか？
え？ありません。
出口割三郎を知っていますか？
知りません。
So this anime appears to capture the spirit of Yamano's philosophy on science fiction. But where does that leave Rentaro? Well, if there is one contribution he could have made to this anime, it could easily be turning this absurdist sci-fi thriller into a tribute to Duke Ellington. You know, what I talked about in the beginning of this video? It's no secret that Rentaro is a fan of that super old school American jazz sound, as we've seen in previous works. So he, along with jazz pianist Yosuke Yamashita, teamed up to make the soundtrack entirely Ellington-inspired piano jazz. Take the A Train figures the most into the compositions because by turning an upbeat jazz standard into this chaotic variation. It's a very out there tribute to a highly influential jazz composer, but it still works as a tribute. Take the X Train works as both a visual experiment, an absurdist romp, and a monument to its influential jazz piece and its performer, but it is not without its flaws. My main problem with this anime is that Toru is kind of a flat character. He's distinct enough in both design and personality to not be an audience surrogate, but you never really get a good bead on his entire thought process throughout this anime. And I know it's sort of the point that he goes along with this plot without question as he gets dragged from one plot point to another by forces beyond his control, but it would be nice to actually get inside his head and find out what he's really thinking aside from the occasional thought bubble, pithy remark, or scream of fear. And for as visually focused as this anime is, themes and symbolism are strangely absent from this anime. I guess there might be something about the government not having its people's best interest at heart and just using its populace as tools to further its own goals regardless of how small they are, but come on, we get proof of that every day. Are you really breaking new ground with that sort of revelation? For as weird as this anime is, the overall larger plot is surprisingly straightforward. Mysterious supernatural events, guy connected to said events, government conspiracy, do the math. It's not that deep, fam. But, flaws or not, I'm just super happy that an anime like Take the X Train had the opportunity to exist. We are currently living in a world where studios are pumping out more and more anime at a, frankly, worrying pace. And none of these would ever get the chance to be this completely off-the-walls manic in their execution. We should be happy that an anime this oddball, suspenseful, and downright jazzy was given the chance at life by a games company that still had its reputation intact. Animators were given the chance to show off their skills in harnessing the power of electricity. A director was able to experiment with smashing genres together and telling a story through abnormal editing and boarding techniques. A jazz pianist was able to adapt American jazz standard to a discordant soundtrack for what is essentially a supernatural chase scene. This is the highest selling point I could give you for Take the X Train. It is one of the few anime that was made on the basis of art for art's sake. a composition that was crafted not just from the mind of one artist, but from the minds of many. Put your instruments down and give thanks.